Alright, in this last installment of me reviewing all the various different forms of prima, opprimere, which of course you can find on your Canvas page, we are going to talk about participles. Participles are unique on this page. And again, if you were to look all of it as a whole, you can see it here that I give the indicatives, statements of fact. I give the imperatives, the commands. I give the infinitives, of which we've only learned one as of yet, the present active, but that's about to change over the next 2 weeks. And of course down here, the participles. Participles are unique because they are not verbs. They are from verbs, and our verb that we are using here is opprima, opprimere, oppressi, oppressus, but they are adjectives. That is what they are. So let's review our participle forms. Now participles are adjectives, which means like adjectives, they're going to have 30 forms. How do we get that? Well, there are 5 cases: nominative, genitive, dative, accusative, ablative. I leave out vocative because it's always the same. And then obviously it has both singular and plural forms, and that's 2 times 5, that gives me 10, and they have to have the ability to be all 3 genders. You can see that most clearly in the participles that are first and second declension adjectives: us, first and second declension endings, us, first and second declension endings, us, first and second declension endings, and then the one that is a third declension adjective, which of course is the present active participle. So, let's go through them. Now, because they are verbal adjectives, they are going to have the aspects of a verb in that they will have tense. They can be present, they can be perfect, they can be future. And they have voice, active and passive. There should be 6 of them, but the present passive does not exist. The perfect active does not exist. And so, let's look at how we recognize them. Opprimanes, opprimanes, opprimanes. And I say that 3 times because there are 3 words that are there. It just happens to be those 3 words are identical. And so this is actually a third declension adjective of single termination. You compare that with an is-a adjective, like brewis, brewis, brewe, is a third declension adjective of double termination, meaning that in the nominative there are 2 forms, brewis and brewis, for the masculine and the feminine, and then brewe. Then there are some that are triple termination, like acer, acris, acre in the nominative. But here we have all 3 nominatives and all 3 genitives. You will recognize a present active participle by the fact that the nominative is going to end with an ns, not an ending, and then it'll have nt with a third declension ending. And so the vast majority of the 30 forms, 26 as a matter of fact, are going to have nt plus third declension endings, which we should know is variant is, ime, ace, ibis, ace, ibis. And so it'd be opprimanes, 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 opprimentis, opprimentis, opprimentis for the genitive line, opprimenti, opprimenti, opprimenti for the dative line, opprimentem, opprimentem for the accusative, and then opprimanes. So you get the 3 nominatives and the 1 neuter accusative as the ns. The rest have an nt ending. Now how do we translate it? It will in this instance, since this verb means to crush, be translated simply as crushing. And so the crushing subject does something. Or, in all of the other cases, obviously, still translated crushing. It's just a matter of what it's modifying. The perfect passive participle is the 4th principal part. Opprima, opprimere, oppressi, oppressus. And so therefore, oppressus having been crushed. Now I put the having been in parentheses. Crushed in this instance. Because if I were to have a grape in my hand that I've already squished, that it's either I am holding the having been crushed grape, or I could simply say I'm holding the grape crushed, or the crushed grape. Now, these last 2, future active and future passive. Future active is going to be easily recognizable because of the UR. All you take is the 4th principal part, perfect passive participle, and shove a UR in it. When you do that, you then made a future active, which is going to translate about to crush. And then likewise, for the future passive, which goes by another name, it is also known as the gerundive. You will recognize it because of the nd. And if it's about to crush, for the active, the passive is going to be about to be crushed. Now, this is the last word that I have to say. Remember that a participle can be a part of a periphrastic. Periphrastic, 2 words, 1 verbal expression. One of those words is going to be a participle. And we've seen the perfect passive participle used with the perfect passive verb, the pluperfect passive verb, and the future perfect passive verb. But in a grammar book, whenever they talk about periphrastics, they're almost exclusively talking about the verbal forms that use the future. And thus we talk about the future active periphrastic, which that is a part of it, with the form of the verb to be, and the future passive periphrastic once we add and combine that with a form of the verb to be. As a matter of fact, most Latin teachers would not call what we have in the indicative with that guy right there, the perfect passive participle, and let's go quickly look at them. There we are. These 3 guys right here, opressus es, opressas, or opressus eras, and opressus eris, most Latin teachers wouldn't refer to them as periphrastics. I call them that because they are. They technically meet the definition, but most Latin teachers would reserve the term periphrastic for the combination of these 2 participles combined with a form of the verb to be. So, that's what we're going to learn about in class today.